Hello, and here we are back on the Ancestral Tarot Path. Now, today I have been working through chapter 4. So, this chapter is actually going to be done in two parts because they're quite in depth topics and tasks that you have to perform. Chapter 4 is Meet the Family. Who are they really? So I'm halfway through, and you can see there are quite a number of pages of work that have been completed in getting me this far. How have I found it personally so far? Quite honestly, very enlightening and very true to what I know of my ancestors, particularly ancestors going to as far as on one side of the family, my great-great-grandparents. On the task that I have done in this chapter, I have 18 people on the ancestral chart. Now be prepared, because in this chapter you have to create this chart 3 times because you're using a deck of tarot cards. I have chosen to use the Universal Celtic Tarot in this particular task, and you have to carry out this particular task 3 times. Once using the court cards, once using the majors, and once using the minors. Each of these groups of cards, the courts look at the personality traits of the ancestor. The majors, the archetypes to your ancestor's personality, and the minors, the everyday work, everyday life of your ancestors, how they were portrayed, trials and tribulations, etc. So let's get to my notes. So first of all, you have to choose your tarot deck that you are working with. I will be referring to this book here now, so I'll just turn to the table. Excuse my side on here. You have to, I'll move that so you can see what I've done. You have to split the deck into the 3 groups, okay? You pick out your cards. I have them face down, and I made little notes on a piece of paper that you can see there, and it says which pile is which. So those are my minors, these are my courts, and these here are my majors. And doing this enables you to make sure you're working from the right pack, the right pile, and not mixing things up. For the last task, where we're working with minors, you can incorporate your majors or your courts if you wish, but that's adding more of an archetype. I preferred to look just at the minors so that I can get a working day view of each of the ancestors. So how did this go? Let's have a look. So first of all, you can see the ancestor chart. It starts with me, goes to my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents in some of them. Okay, the red pages that I've put over here, on some of them here, you will see I've just covered stuff because that's personal to me, that is something that I just keywords and keynotes that I've added here that I'm keeping for my own reference, which I did say I would do early on when we first started this. So, like I say, courts show off personality, minors show everyday life, and the majors the archetypal energy. So what I did, the first one on this chart, was draw it out. I could have gone great-great-great-grandparents and bring all the other ancestors in down the line, but for now I was focusing on the last one. Well, myself is 1, so I wasn't focusing on me, so my parents, 1, 2, 3, 4, going into a 5th generation. There are 18 people on this, and I am lucky to have known 8 of them. Okay, now when I carried out this task, on my mum's side we had 2 kings, 3 queens, 1 page and 1 knight. And they were broken down into 2 wands, 2 swords, 2 cups and 1 pentacle, which really gave that me an even balance really of elements, because we're also looking at elements of each of the suits here. So we would have our fire, our air, our water and our earth. And albeit I only had 1 earth element, that actually sat right, because there were 2 wands, 2 swords and 2 cups, which is 2 fire, 2 air and 2 water, which are more sort of emotionally balanced, stable. There was like a very sort of balanced overview. Now, on my father's side, there were 5 kings, 2 queens, 2 knights, 2 pages. Of those, 2 were wands, 4 were swords, 1 was a cup, and 4 pentacles. So they were predominantly swords and pentacles being earth and air, which was leaned more into one type of personality. So let's look at what we have here. Mum's side's pretty equal balanced elementally. This explains why I have a love for the arts. It explains why I like creativity, literature, history, and the desire to learn new things, with the support from my mum, and pass that on to my own children. My mum enjoys the literature, she enjoys art, and she enjoys learning new things. My dad's side would be more practical, okay, and harder in the sense that they wouldn't rely, they wouldn't be all huggy, or they wouldn't be all, come on, let's do this. This is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it now. You've got the determination, you've got the support, now off you go. Whereas there was that little bit more tenderness on my mother's side, there was less of it shown on my father's side. That is not necessarily including my mother and father there, that's including their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents. So, dad's side would be more practical, a little harder than mum's side emotionally. They would be prone to saying it how it is, and sort of a tough love attitude. They would be prone to putting finances and a tough attitude before creativity and emotions. Dad was someone who liked to learn, and in the sense of progression when it came to his work, and he also enjoyed history in particular, which I think is something that was encouraged by his mum, who loved history and geography. My nan, she passed that, Dad and Nan passed that on to me, because I have a great love of history. Now, when I look at myself in all this and looking at this, I have traits of both. We're all hard workers on both sides, and that will come to the fore in the next section. Then we moved on, after we moved on to this, there's a second method of working out personality using the quartz, and that is to add up, pick your ancestors. I actually just chose mum and dad for this example, making it easier for me. And you're sort of looking at what you can actually bring in an archetype from the majors here, in the sense you take the date of birth, or the month, the day and the month, and add it up with the year that we're working with them. So it's 2022. That came to 2037, and when you add all those numbers up, it came to 12. Okay, and this is linked to the major energy of the Hanged Man. And that was my dad. If there was an issue, he'd step back and look at it from a different angle. How could we go around it instead of letting it stop us in our progression in any problems that arose in life? My mum, hers broke down to 7, which was the chariot, which is, well, we'll do it this way. She would back my father, and they would, go ahead together. And they did balance out very nicely. In the later generations, albeit the man was the head of the household, they were actually supported by stronger women, because on all of the couples, the female appeared as the stronger, predominantly, so not all of them, on most of them, the female was the stronger sort of court card. So the men were actually supported by stronger women, in the sense that without their support or advice, they would have all struggled. It's also interesting to note that in every couple on that chart, the females outlived the males, which is very, very all of them so far, all outlived the males on both sides. So then we moved on to the major arcana, and again we made up a further graph, everybody on there, and this time they were allocated a major. Now, I haven't told you how I've allocated them. So when I was looking at the courts, you don't stand and pick a court card out. You have your courts, you shuffle them. You have your chart, you pick out which card you're drawn to, and then you write the name of that card underneath the name of the person on the chart you've picked it for, and you pop it back into the pile and reshuffle them. You then do the same for each person, and that is how they are given their court card. You then do the same for the majors, okay? You pick a card, shuffle them, pick a card, write down the person you're shuffling it for. So I would say looking at my mum, and write the card down, pop it back into the deck, pop it down, write it down, and so forth. You do that for everyone, and the same again with the minors. Now, when I did the majors, this was quite interesting. You see, I didn't have a huge amount of the same major. Everybody had a different major. There was 2 repeats, but it was 1 on each side. So really, in that sense, there might be a marginally stronger archetype of either the magician or the emperor. Now, on saying that, as I say, each couple, so my mother and father were emperor and temperance. So my mother was sort of the emperor, the disciplinarian, and my father was temperance, and he liked a peaceful life. My mother wasn't big or dramatic or demanding, but she was a leader and she was a supporter, and she was led by my father to a degree, but they would discuss things and work things out, and Mum was there as a strong support for him. So that really does sit brilliantly in that role. And it's also very well, you wouldn't call it strange, but very interesting to note that my father had 2 very strong women in his life, and that was his mum, which is my nan, Kitty. She was an emperor too. So both his wife and his mother were emperors, an emperor archetype in his life. And I think that's what supported him throughout his life, was the love of those 2 women. Now, and my grandfather was, would you believe, was the empress, so nurturing and pushing me on and encouraging him to do things, which really does sit well. It does all gel together. So when you've drawn this, you then look at the archetypes for each of the people that you have drawn a card for. So as I have said, there's, once again, the women appear to be the stronger in the partnerships, and this links with the personality traits of the courts. It is interesting to note, that I've told you that my father had an emperor for a wife and a mother. Clearly we have a mixed bag of archetypes, which when we look on it at a closer level, it is easy to see how I came to be the person I am. I come from a line of strong women, many who have had to deal with a lot of adversity in their lives, yet went on to live long lives through hard work and sheer determination, leading the way and being there for many to rely on, which is a trait that I see in myself, in my mother, in both my grandmothers, and if we were to go further along the line, in my great-grandmothers too. My dad found a balance in his life and passed down his love for the quiet life without drama, supported by my mum, who is or was the disciplinarian. There's going back, there's a person that appears on this line that was brought up by a high priestess justice combo, which would have made for a strict upbringing of sorts. This person's archetype is the devil, and this tells me this person rebelled, did their own thing, and in doing so it had long-reaching consequences through generations to come that followed. This twist can on occasion be seen in myself with my devil-may-care attitude and some aspects in some aspects of my own life. All the way down, the ancestors were hard workers, not work shy or layabouts. That is reflected in today in my own children, who all work hard and play hard too. They have the traits that were instilled in all of us of honesty, kindness to others, love and tolerance, although on that score I would be like my dad's side of the family, which would, not suffer fools gladly. Whereas my mum's side would be quiet, more tolerant, and sort of step back quietly and just let the fool on. Whereas I would be more confrontational on that sense. The gentler and more tolerant side is seen more in my brother and sister. I do have aspects of it, but I would be quicker to rise than they would be. We then moved on to the minor arcana, and the minor arcana shows us everyday life of our ancestors. And again, we draw out another chart and we pull out the minors. But here we are focusing on both the number and the suit. Okay, so in this, I drew predominantly wands. Would you believe there were 7 wands, 4 swords, 4 pentacles, and 3 cups. So we're looking at the predominant one here, which is wands. The numbers, they were predominantly 2, 5, and 8. There was only 1 1, 1 4, 1 7, 1 9, 2 6s. The other 3, there was 4 of each. So what does this tell me? The minors' everyday life cards predominantly featured 2s, 5s and 8s, which indicate diplomacy and partnership, changes and challenges, and karma and choices. The suit is predominantly wands, which is our creativity and our ability to work and work hard. Okay, my mum was a 2 of swords, and this reflects the decisions that she's made in life and the fact that she can indeed make choices which have supported my dad and also us as her children and her grandchildren. Mum also speaks honestly and directly, and she has the ability to tell it how it is, but in a very diplomatic manner. This and the Emperor card display her strengths of leadership, albeit my mum would not think this, my dad knew it, and so do all of us. And the personality of the Queen of Wands, with the love of the arts, and where my mum led by example with her love of reading and dance and enjoying the prettier, nicer things, the girly things in life. Dad was a 5 of Wands for his everyday life, and this fits as he was a hard worker and often battled with those in the workplace who wanted a fast fix rather than a professional and perfect fix, which was how my dad worked, as does my brother today, who has carried on that work, and my sister in her workplace and in her crafts. It's all about perfection. There's no quick fixes, and they will fight to make sure things are done properly, and that is a challenge that both of them face in their lives. Now, basically, these traits made him the strong man that we all loved and adored. Along with Dad's Page of Swords and Temperance card, this fits well into the portrayal of my dad in Ancestral Tarot. He was with the Page of Swords. Dad liked to learn new things. He was albeit he was a tradesman and a real master in his craft. He continually learned, had to upgrade and not reskill, but was great at learning, great at managing to achieve what he wanted to. He sort of led by example, but was always out there looking for what could be added to make the business even more of a success. The Temperance card, when he finished work, whereas his daily life would be a 5 of wands and, you know, sorting out jobs, his daily life at home would be temperance, would be peace. He didn't like bad atmospheres and would be more inclined to say, oh, just let it go. Whereas my mum would address things. Dad would only give his opinion when asked for it. Otherwise, he preferred the quiet life. So that's where I'm up to so far. And there are so many traits running through the veins of the ancestral tarot that can be picked out in myself and my siblings and even in my children today. And it's very interesting to see that when you're pulling these out and being able to recognise these traits in you and then go and recognise them in the people that you knew, so that you now have a map that's showing you this, that you can now trust when you're going to do people even further back in the ancestry. You know you're not going to be led down the garden path, because so far everything that I've managed to sort of work out has fitted in with everything I'm doing. So I'm putting it there to one side for today, because I've spent most of the day doing this. And what I'm going to show you, if you do get this book, that it gives great examples on how to lay out your graphs. Okay, it also gives you the information as to what the numbers refer to, what the court cards refer to, etc., etc. And it's full of helpful information. Also, what I like about this, I'm doing this now and I'm sharing it here with yourselves, and I'm finding that this isn't something that's just going to be finished when the book's finished, because you'll go back and say, right, what can I add to my ancestral tarot now that I know the steps and I've got the skills? How deep can I go? Pick an ancestor to work with. Now, in the second part of chapter 4, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be selecting an ancestor to work with, and we will also then be working on spreads as well. And this goes on to take in a couple of spreads, looking at for patterns, and then filling in the journal section before we move on to chapter 5, which is Ancestors of Blood. So I hope you've enjoyed this next instalment of my journey through the Ancestral Tarot by Nancy Hendrickson. And as I have also, when you're struggling with courts, if you're not too sure, using books such as Know Your Courts, your court cards, or your tarot court. There's also reference to a website that you can find more information on your courts. Let me just find that here. Method 1, it was on method 2. Thanks to the court card expertise of Alison Cross at tarot-thrones.com. There's a second method of determining a court card for the ancestors in your chart. So you can refer to that, Alison, tarot-thrones.com, and there's information on courts there if you're having any form of how do I do that? So that's where we are so far. Oh, I'm just going back to the previous video when we were doing the sigils. I smudged mine a bit in the middle because I added oil to it. But what you can see here, it's upside down. You can see the sun. You can see the flag that the child on the horseback carries. I've added leaves for the sunflowers. The reason it's a bit smudgy there, I'm going to neaten that up, is because I added oil to it, which was citronella, because I love the smell of it, and it takes me back to the last holiday we had with my mum and dad before my father passed away, because I bought a lovely oil out when we were on holiday in Bali, and I use that scent in here, and I just think it's lovely. And there's a lovely portrait of my father that a friend of mine got me for Christmas, which I'm so in love with, and he's watching over me doing this now. So folks, I'll wrap this up and look forward to sharing the second part of chapter 4 with you in the coming week. Take care, have a lovely weekend, and thank you for being with me on this journey. Bye bye now.